This is Putting It Straight. Rethink your beliefs. Redefine your life.
If you are a boss and suddenly one day you realize that your employee or assistant has outshone you, he becomes the go-to man, he's the center of attraction within your organization, what would you do? People's reaction towards a phenomenon like this and the phenomenon itself is the focus of this video today. But before we proceed, these are the things we are going to explore, the things to learn if you sit through the entire video. In other words, we are going to find out what does it mean for a servant to suddenly outshine, be the star of the organization, and the master is not reckoned with or appears not to be reckoned with. And what are the possible reactions you would put out to such a situation? Should such a situation be welcomed? What does it actually mean? Before we delve into the nitty-gritty of the phenomenon, let me say that in many organizations, owners have discovered to their surprise or some to their shock that their employees, one or two, may have the popularity such that the boss, the owner, the CEO, popularity seems to pale into insignificance. This is easily found or observed in government offices where you have the director, and then those working under him seems to be the star of the time and place. It could be in the churches where you have the presiding pastor and he has maybe channels and subordinate pastors, but he's not popular. Maybe the channel becomes the man everybody wants, and it is possible for the pastor to say, what is happening? People have pushed me aside. And it is such situations, whether in the clubs where you set up a club, you found a club and bring others in, and you suddenly realize that one or two of the club members seems to be the ogre of the place. It's normal for humans to sit back and think and be suspicious and wonder. That is what we are going to discuss and see. Have you experienced this yourself somewhere? If you have, let me know in the comment below. Besides, generally, people react in ways that betray their inadequacies or the fears they have. They either react with anger and take it personal as an effrontery. Why should people be coming to ask after my boy? You should ask after my assistant when I am the boss, I'm the ogre. People don't reckon with me. Some react with suspicion that it is a kind of plot for the CEO to be overthrown. And then the so-called popular employee would take over. But does it make sense? Alternatively, some react with reprimand and threats, telling the popular staff to take note that he is only the boss and he himself a servant. Well, if I had time to tell you my personal experience, I would. Where I jointly grew up a church, which we started together. But by the grace of God, I had greater skill at preaching and teaching. And so people gravitated towards me. And the pastor in charge, the owner of the church, took offense He felt I was going to overthrow him and take the church. And so they organized themselves, himself, his wife, and a few friends, and then threw me out for fear that I would take over the church. But does that fear seem real? Now, this is the real, true interpretation of that phenomenon. This is how we should interpret it wherever it happens. Any employee or subordinate outshining his boss simply shows that such a staff is excellent. Is an instrument sent by nature, providence, to such organization for growth. You see, excellence manifests through giftedness. Let me bring a biblical example. You see, when the little boy, shepherd boy, David, in the Old Testament story, appeared in the history of the Israelites in the battlefield, he had nothing in mind when he killed Goliath. And so the people around, the women in particular, out of happiness, gratitude to God for a salvation from the hands of the wicked neighbors who have been tormenting them perennially, they sang, "Oh, David has killed in his thousands, and the King Saul has killed in his tens." You know, sometimes these problems don't arise by themselves. It is people who stoke the fire of envy and jealousy and bring about problems. So it is as a result of giftedness. David had the gift that King Saul didn't have, neither of his superior officers, to devastate the enemy before them. But it is that same ability, that gift, that attracted envy. Another thing to mention and observe is that excellence manifests in the possession or display of positive mindset to duties. In an organization, all workers can't possibly have the same attitude to work. But the one that has an extra edge in performance, in skill, in knowledge beyond the rest is bound to make a multiple effect in terms of the difference as to how the organization runs, which explains why some staff outshine others or sometimes outshine their masters. Excellence also means one's level of knowledge or skill is higher than the rest. Let me pause to make one important point here. A lot of us think performance, effectiveness, or efficiency at workplace is related to rank, to title, and possibly age. These are false indices. These are things that mislead people to make the wrong judgments and as a result bring about wrong reaction. No. Because what you learn as a bachelor and what I also study as a bachelor cannot be the same. I might have studied other things. I might have been imbued. I might have been gifted, and you are not. Yet we have the same BSc. So how can you perform exactly like myself? Now the question is, why should you welcome this development? Why should people make a rethink of such a development? Because generally people think this is a threat and it must be dealt with right away. You have to welcome a situation where your servant outshines you for some valid reasons, such as one, because excellent employees are, or whether they are assistant or servant, they are assets to the organization, not liability. They are not a threat either. Why? Because their overall contribution will go to promote the organization and benefit you, the CEO. So there's no need to be negative, to take things personal. You should rather be appreciative that you have such an asset too. Such an employee has something that you, the boss, or maybe other staff do not have, yet that are needed in order to make the organization or group grow. That's the way to see it, and that's why it must be appreciated. Point number 3 is that you have to learn from such individual. Many bosses cannot be humble enough to say to such a guy whom they feel as a threat, I say, guy, look, you have made a change. You have made a lot of changes in this guy. Say, what's the trick? What's it? And then be humble to learn, to study that young man or woman and see what may be the difference. And finally, any negative reaction, such as harassment, punishment, or dismissal from place of work, will be counterproductive to your interest, because sending such a person out sends a negative signal to the others that they have to work below their capacity. And at the end, who suffers? It is the organization and you, the owner. So now that you have known that when a servant outshines his master in popularity, there are reasons and there are things to do and not to do. What is your reaction? Let me know in the comment. Meanwhile, if this presentation has been useful, kindly share this new knowledge, like it, and subscribe to this channel to help change perceptions.